I'm so excited to share with you that this podcast is sponsored by The Real Real, the best place to shop authenticated luxury bags, clothing, watches, and so much more. I love scouring The Real Real for new pieces. There are 10,000 new items every day, and they do their daily drops at 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can shop and sell at The Real Real, which is great because you can use those earnings to buy something special. I just bought a gold Fendi bracelet, a hinge bracelet. I can't wait to wear it. The Real Real is attainable luxury that upgrades your personal style. With up to 90% off retail, you can finally have the pieces that you've been dreaming of from brands like Gucci, Fendi, and Prada. So The Real Real is the world's largest and most trusted resource for authenticated luxury resale. With thousands of new arrivals daily, no one does resale like The Real Real. And now you can get $25 off your first purchase when you go to therealreal.com/Kate Casey. That's therealreal.com/Kate Casey to get your $25 off. Start shopping at therealreal.com/Kate Casey. Now, we both know that shopping for a rug can be challenging. You've either got insanely expensive handcrafted rugs or the mass-produced alternatives that won't hold up. But that's where Revival Rugs comes in. Revival's founders didn't want to spend thousands on a new rug, but they didn't want to settle for less either. Revival is a global company with teams in the U.S. as well as weaving regions in India, Turkey, and Morocco. Revival works with artisans to preserve rug-making traditions and pass on this value to you. Eliminating middlemen allows them to remove steep markups, giving you amazing value at incredible prices. And Revival's popular washable rugs have the look and feel of a real rug, so you don't have to sacrifice style for convenience. And my favorite, which I ordered, is the sweatshirt rug, and I also love the stripe rug. So spruce up your space with Revival Rugs. Visit revivalrugs.com/realitylife and use code KateCasey20 for 20% off your first order. That's revivalrugs.com/realitylife, code KateCasey20. One more time, revivalrugs.com/realitylife with code KateCasey20 to save 20%. Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. Today's episode is an update on the Karen Read trial. You may remember I covered it extensively last year. Well, there is an update to the case, and I wanted to speak with an attorney. Karen Read is a 44-year-old financial analyst. She is accused of hitting and killing her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, with her SUV in January of 2022 after a heavy night of drinking and then leaving him to die in the snow. Her first criminal trial resulted in a mistrial on July 1st, 2024, due to a hung jury, and jury selection for the second trial began on April 2nd. A multi-part ID discovery series, A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Read, aired last month on HBO. I interviewed the executive producer, Terry Dunmuir, in episode 1246. As the second trial begins, again, I wanted to speak to an attorney to get a clear understanding of the potential legal strategies and to interpret the complex issues of the case. For context, on the night of January 28th, 2022, O'Keefe and Read visited two bars in Canton, Massachusetts, C.F. McCarthy's and Waterfall Bar and Grill. At the second bar, they met up with several acquaintances, including fellow police officer Brian Albert. Shortly after midnight, Albert invited a group of people, including the couple, back to his home at 34 Fairview Road in Canton. The two drove to the home in her SUV. She claims to have dropped him off in the front of the home and left because she wasn't feeling very well. A snowstorm hit Canton in the early morning of January 29th, and she reported that when she woke up the next day, John had not returned home. After he did not respond to calls or texts, she contacted an acquaintance from that night, Jennifer McCabe, who agreed to join her and another woman, Carrie Roberts, in looking for him. The three women returned to Fairview Road in Roberts' vehicle, where they saw John O'Keefe lying unresponsive in the snow. Karen Read exited the car and began CPR. McCabe called 911 at approximately 6:04 a.m., and Canton Police, Fire, and EMS responded to the scene. A medical examiner later reported that O'Keefe had abrasions to his right arm, several lacerations to the face, 2 black eyes, and skull fractures, which would have contributed to brain bleeding. They determined that hypothermia was a contributing factor to his death. Karen Read theorizes that John was beaten inside the home and his body was then left outside. However, there are 11 witness statements that say John O'Keefe never entered the home. The case has caused divisions in Canton as town residents have debated whether John O'Keefe was killed by Karen Reed or whether Karen Reed was framed by the police. Social tensions and family old feuds have reportedly been inflamed by this case. Brian Albert, owner of the Canton home outside of which John O'Keefe was found dead, is a retired Boston police sergeant, last assigned to BPD Fugitive Unit until his retirement on September 4th of 2023. His brothers are Chris Albert, who serves on the Canton Select Board and owns a pizzeria in Canton, and Kevin Albert, who serves in the Canton Police Department as a detective. Chris and his wife Julie and their son Colin were neighbors with John O'Keefe. The Albert family are also longtime friends with Michael Proctor, lead investigator on the case. An ATF agent named Brian Higgins, who was stationed out of the local Canton Police Department, and the nephew of Brian Albert, Colin Albert, are also suspected to be involved in the actual murder of John at the Albert home. Brian Higgins was also having a flirty text exchange with Karen Reed up until and including the night of the murder, going back and forth about whether to date Karen as she was unhappy with John. And there's a mountain of evidence. There's this tailgate. According to police, pieces of cocktail glass and patches of blood were found alongside John O'Keefe's body. They also found pieces of a broken taillight, said to match a broken light of Karen Reed's car. She was arrested on February 1st, 2022, and her phone was taken into custody. She was charged with manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, and leaving the scene of a collision in Lower Stoughton District Court on February 2nd of 2022. In April of 2023, Karen Reed's attorneys presented a theory that implicated Brian Albert, who owned the home outside of which John O'Keefe was found dead, and his sister-in-law Jennifer McCabe, who had been drinking with Karen and John on January 28th and helped Karen find John's body on the morning of January 29th. Evidence showed that Brian Albert sold his house and he got rid of his dog after the incident. And Jennifer McCabe made a Google search, "How long to die in the cold" at 2:27 a.m. Also, a snowplow operator said there was no body outside at 2:30 a.m. A Massachusetts State Police forensic scientist testified that she found what appeared to be a human hair on the rear bumper of Karen's car. Even the medical examiner has ruled his death undetermined and admitted in court John's body did not have injuries common to being hit by a large SUV. The defense believed John went into the home of the night in question and was led to the basement where a fight broke out between Brian Higgins, possibly Colin Albert, and Brian Albert's dog. John also had unexplained bite and scratch marks on his arm, indicative of being attacked by a large dog that cannot be accounted for otherwise. And the Albert family owned a large German Shepherd named Chloe, who, after 7 years with the family, was promptly rehomed following John's death. So as you can see, there is a mountain of questions and evidence that are complex. And I asked Robert Peabody, a former prosecutor and attorney with Husch Blackwell's white-collar internal investigations and compliance practice in Boston, to provide insight. He has 2 clients that were experts in the first trial. And also a fun fact, his father was the 62nd governor of Massachusetts. I was so grateful to speak with him this week. Here is my interview. Robert, you are a Boston attorney. You have to tell me, is this all that anybody talks about in Boston?
Well, they did talk at length about it during the first trial, not at the beginning of the trial, but as the media sensation grew and grew, then more and more people were talking about it, particularly in the suburbs. I didn't hear that much about it in the city, and the city meaning the sort of communities right around Boston. Dedham is one of them, and so is Canton. But this really captivated the South Shore, as they would call it, which is where Canton and Dedham are.
Now, do you feel like you hear equal sides for Karen and opposed to Karen, or is it different in the city? Like, I try to get a sense from watching the trial and following all the news coverage. Can you get a sense of in that area if there are more people that are for Karen Reed or against?
Well, I think certainly in that where the case is most fascinated by, at least neighborhoods and sections of South Shore, as I call it. South Shore is south of Boston, every part south of Boston. I think people are generally sympathetic to her. She comes over she's attractive, she's articulate. She seems wronged by this whole process. Nobody really sides with the government type thing. It wasn't a grisly murder of 12 people type thing. It was potentially at minimum, it was a maybe it was a car accident that caused his death. So, but I think it didn't really grab the attention of people until the so-called Turtle Boys started really drumming up, public media attention, social media attention. But I think, I know something about the case because I had two witnesses who testified, doctors, so nothing about the case, just about the medical stuff. But I don't think the people really sort of support the prosecution per se, because they're a big bad government, I suppose. Although there was a fairly strong group of people, supporting Officer O'Keefe and his family and so forth, but not to the extent when you saw it outside the courthouse. It was 3/4 pink and 1/4 blue, if you know what I mean, wearing the T-shirts. So I think, generally speaking, if you ask people about it, they say, God, it's a complicated case and it's going on for week on week. Who's to know what's going on? But I think she tends to be considered the underdog, and therefore people are supporting her.
Now, you were actually in the courtroom, so talk to me a little bit about what that experience was like.
Well, the court, it's being tried in Norfolk Superior Court, Norfolk County Superior Court, which is county south of Boston, as I described. It's an old courthouse made of stone, marble floors, stone stairwells and so forth. And there's a giant courtroom, since it was built in the 1800s, probably, or the early 1900s. There's a big courtroom, which is where most of these serious trials go on, because there's a large area for the gallery for the public to sit behind the bar and so forth and so on. The defense apparently opposed that the trial be in that courtroom because they complained that the jury couldn't look at the witnesses in the box directly. They were on the side, so it wouldn't be fair to the defendant. So they insisted to be moved to the smaller courtroom, which is on the second floor. And I was in that courtroom because I had these witnesses, and so I got this. There were 2 seats for the so-called public, that is, and the public was lawyers or other people, law enforcement, who were there to watch it. And the only people in the courtroom, and that's part of the reason why it's being televised, in part, is because it's a very small space. It's claustrophobic. It's cramped. There's room for the judge on the bench, her staff in front of her, 2 tables of lawyers. And then the only public that are there are either Karen Reed's family, who are behind her. John O'Keefe's family are sort of at a 90-degree angle facing the lawyers or across from the lawyers. And then there's a table or a counter full of attorneys, not attorneys, press, who are taking notes. That's it. So there isn't a large assembly of the public who get to come in and sit and watch the trial, and because there are no seats for them. So it's kind of bizarre, seems to me. If I was the judge, I wouldn't agree to that. No, we're going to go in the big courtroom. This is going to be a popular case. People are going to be showing up, and we need room for people. There's no room for anyone except the people I've described. That's weird.
Wow.
Today, the beverage aisle looks a lot different than it used to. America's beverage companies are working together. We're delivering the options everyone wants. In fact, nearly 60% of beverages Americans buy have 0 sugar. You'll find more variety than ever, including more of your favorites, now available with 0 sugar. You'll also find more sizes and clear calorie information on the front of every can, bottle, and pack. We know when it comes to finding balance, the more choices, the better.
Some people get a wild haircut or book a spontaneous trip when life throws them a curveball. But Molly? Well, she dove headfirst into a world of no-strings-attached sex, secret rendezvous, forbidden affairs, and unforgettable adventures. And together, we tell every juicy detail in Dying for Sex, Wondery's award-winning podcast that's now streaming on a TV near you, starring Michelle Williams and Jenny Slate. And to top it off, we're dropping brand new bonus episodes where I sit down with the cast to spill all the spicy secrets. Desire, friendship, self-discovery, and the ultimate bucket list of pleasure. This is a story that had everyone talking. Listen to the original Dying for Sex and brand new episodes on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge the original series before anyone else and completely ad-free on Wondery Plus.
Were you surprised by the hung jury?
No, I wasn't surprised by the hung jury because that day I was in there, the jurors, and they're 12, as everybody knows, 12 in a jury, but they always sign up alternates, and they had 5 or 6 alternates, so there are 18 jurors, in seats, packed into I forgot the jury, they're in the room too, so it makes it even more crowded. And they look so uncomfortable and so squeezed in. And then they had to hear testimony over 10 weeks. I mean, there's no way in God's green earth you could absorb all that information and all the sideshows and all the themes that both sides were projecting. And it seemed to me a morass of stuff. And the defense did a very good job in creating these defenses or themes that, it had nothing to do with the car. It had to be the whole family's inside the Arnold house, and all the friends who were there, and they'd been drinking before at the Canton pub, et cetera, et cetera. So they did a good job presenting that, and that seemed to be enough, let alone the confusion of the case. Because if a jury is confused, they're just going to say not guilty because we can't understand the evidence. I think they did. They were out 4 days. But if you believe the jurors or the few jurors who spoke out afterwards, they didn't seem to have any difficulty finding her not guilty, even though they neglected to mark the verdict slip to that effect. Mm-hmm. They didn't find it that she really had the intent to kill him, which is the murder too, and that she didn't leave the scene after causing an accident knowingly. You have to know that you did it. You can't just drive. If you drive off and you didn't know it, then you're not responsible. Nonetheless, it was the middle charge, involuntary manslaughter, vehicular homicide, that apparently, according to that juror or two, was what they were deadlocked over. I alluded to that they didn't mark the verdict slip. They just went back to the judge and said, we can't reach a verdict, thinking apparently that they had to be unanimous in all 3 counts, which is not the case. They can go one after the other. Many juries return partial verdicts. We decided 2 counts, Judge. She brings them in, she receives the verdicts, and she sends them back. If that actually happened, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. But I do think the jury had, if they didn't have any issues with the first 2 counts or the counts 1 and 3, they certainly had an issue whether the car evidence was relevant and whether, in fact, she did hit him.
One of the jurors has now joined Karen Reed's defense team or is working with them. Is that a surprise to you?
Yeah. If I was the defense team, I would thank you, but no thank you. Yeah. It's a little... Lawyers in Massachusetts are prohibited from speaking with jurors in cases they've just tried. And that's not true in a lot of other jurisdictions, but in Massachusetts, you may not contact a juror. Now, if a juror contacts you, and I've had that experience when I was a prosecutor, running into a juror in the subway on the way home after they returned a verdict in a rape case that I did years ago. And I went, hello, and that person came to me and started telling me everything. And that's the only circumstance for them to be able to bring that person on not a counselor, but as an advisor. I think they'd have to get the permission of the court to do that. Maybe there's a time period in between where it doesn't count anymore. But there's a reason why you don't talk to jurors, because you don't want to ask them questions that create problems later. So we'll see. I can't imagine that person, well, other than providing guidance about some of the issues and how the jury played. It's like having a jury consultant. Mm-hmm. Actually, you have a former person, but I don't know the specifics. I wouldn't bring that person on. It's fraught with peril.
Now, since the last trial ended, there's more information that's come out, and certainly the ID Discovery several-part miniseries has the docuseries has, I would think, changed a lot of people's points of view. How much do you think that is going to affect the second trial?
The general rule of thumb, Kate, is that your client never speaks to anybody about the case, friend or foe. And you certainly don't go public, because you have a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. So anything you say can and will be used against you. Now, they have made a very tactical decision that they think they're in such a strong position that it helps their case by going out. In these cases, she actually explains, Karen Reed says, I dropped him off, he went inside, and I left, which was not part of the evidence in the first trial because she didn't testify. We'll see how that shakes out. But I think jurors, and they're still picking juries this week. They're on week 1 is done, and they haven't got a full jury yet. They got 10 on Friday, but they need 17. you can bet your Bippy that they've been asked those questions. What have you? I mean, it's saturated the media, so they're all going to have seen it. And what you have to do as a judge and lawyers is pick jurors who can be impartial and not think about that and not be weighed about that, but listen to the evidence during the trial and make your decision based on what you heard in court. Can that be done? We'll have to see.
So following the first trial and then watching that series, has it changed your opinion on the events that occurred?
Well, I watched some of the testimony during the trial when I could. And since then, I've watched snippets here and there, particularly the Albert family and the people who were inside the house and what they had to say. Just as an aside, I mean, I think one of the problems with the government's case is they're calling it a frame up, but I would call it a rush to judgment. I think they had it in their minds. It often happens with police investigations, particularly that aren't very sophisticated or thorough, is that they decide who the defendant's going to be or who's responsible, and they work back from there. And in this case, it seems they did. Within 2 days, they arrested her for a vehicular homicide and were determined that she was the one. And, she wasn't going to flee. So they really should have bided their time and waited and done more examination and talked to the people in the house and examined the house and brought those people, all of those people, family and friends, into the grand jury and asked them questions about what they knew and see what happens. I would bet to you, and that's what watching the series and listening to the testimony of some of those people, that if the defense's theory is valid, that there was some shenanigans going on in the house, some of those people would have taken the fifth in the grand jury for fear that if they said anything, it could be used against them. But the government didn't do any of that, and it's too late to do that now. They just went with the car, the broken taillight, the snowplow dryer, and the cops on the scene. That's what they did, and they went full bore into he hit her or she hit him, backed into him, and so forth. So, those are some of the issues I think that have cropped out, and I think I probably, what do I think? I think the defense is a very good case. I think it's hard to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think that's all they have to decide. You could have some opinions that maybe she was driving, maybe she hit him accidentally. But did they place all the taillights and stuff like that? Was that all set up? It creates certainly an issue, but police corruption is a bad thing. And I worked as a prosecutor for 15 years, and I worked with some questionable police officers and federal agents, but not many. And if we thought there were some issues, we, the prosecutors, squelched it. We thought there was a problem with the case and some games going on, we squelched it. We weren't going forward with this. So maybe there is corruption, but it'll hang on the neck of the Norfolk DA's office if it comes out later.
Talk to me a little bit about how, in a case like this, the sophistication level of a small town police department.
Well, two things. First of all, there are not a lot of them. It's not a force of 100 men. They're women. Mm-hmm. Probably 50, 40. I don't know. I have no idea. But I was a prosecutor in Middlesex County in Massachusetts, which took in Cambridge and Somerville and Everett and Malden, bigger sort of suburban cities. And I was a prosecutor in Boston, Suffolk County, which is a big city, and as a U.S. attorney, the District of Massachusetts. So the police officers and the police forces that are really in the belly of the beast, they're the best because they get a case after case, experience after experience. They're kind of battle tested. I used to find when you had federal task forces and they assigned police officers, local police officers to work them, I found that the well-experienced, well-traveled police officers from Boston, place like that, they taught the federal agents a lot about how to put cuffs on people because they did it all the time. When you get out in the suburbs like that, it's just not a very busy town. There's drunk driving and there's maybe break-ins in people's houses and small drug cases. They're just not that busy. And as a result, they don't really have the urban experience that other cops get. So this was a problematic night. It was a snowy night, very snowy night. One or two cops came out off duty. One was on duty. They couldn't control the crime scene. They didn't put yellow tape. I know it was hard, but they got to do that. No one went in the house to people. It was poorly investigated. The state troopers are involved, Kate, because when a crime occurs in a town, the local police respond. but they don't have the manpower, person power to prosecute serious crimes like murders. And so the state police are situated all around the state in the various DA's offices. They're called CPAC units, and they're deployed to go into that town and handle the investigation for the murders, for serious sexual assault charges, things like kidnappings, the serious stuff. The interesting in the city of Boston is a big police force that has its own homicide unit. They want no help from the state police. And as you can see this case play out, the state police did not crown themselves with glory in the handling of this too. So there's a delay between the time the Canton cops are running the scene and the state troopers show up to do whatever they have to do, arrest her, take the car, etc. So yeah, it's worrisome. They're not that experienced, and a lot of things slip through the cracks.
Well, and Michael Proctor, what do you think about his firing this week?
I think it's extraordinary. He's been fired because he behaved abominably with his texts to his friends and fellow, his sister and so forth. Mm-hmm. It's so unprofessional. It's so unnecessary. If you're the prosecutor and you get a police officer or a trooper doing these things, you look at them and say, why in heaven's name would you do that? It's not necessary. Do your bloody job. And, his job, I'm not sure what job he did. I haven't seen his reports or anything like that, but he shows up the next day. He takes the car. He has the experts study it. They look for the scene. The SIRS unit comes out, or the CERT unit. And then in 2 days, he's got a warrant for her. So I think he was 10,000, a mile high and an inch deep. I don't think he really played much of a role, but he was the leader in the investigation. Therefore, he's responsible. And he was an easy target to impugn and challenge his credibility. And now he's off the force. So he's not going to be the police officer, the trooper testifying in the next case. His deputy is going to be doing it. Mm.
Everyone has that friend who seems kind of perfect. For Patty, that friend was Desiree. Until one day,
I texted her and she was not getting the text. So I went to Instagram. She has no Instagram anymore. And Facebook, no Facebook anymore.
Desiree was gone. And there was one person who knew the answer.
I am a spiritual person, a magical person, a witch.
A gorgeous Brazilian influencer called Cat Torres, but who was hiding a secret. From Wondery, based on my smash hit podcast from Brazil, comes a new series, Don't Cross Cat, about a search that led me to a mystery in a Texas suburb.
I'm calling to check on the two missing Brazilian girls.
Maybe get some undercover crew there.
The family are freaking out. They are lost.
I'm Chico Felitti. You can listen to Don't Cross Cat on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Cassie DePeckle, the host of Wondery's podcast, Against the Odds. In each episode, we share thrilling, true stories of survival, putting you in the shoes of the people who live to tell the tale. In our next season, it's February 14th, 1979. Elmo Wortman and his 3 children are stranded on a remote Alaskan island after a massive storm destroys their sailboat. Miles from help, they have to face the brutal cold with barely any food, only a sail for shelter, and a leaky plastic dinghy. Desperate to survive, they build a raft and try to reach safety. But as starvation and frostbite take hold and days stretch into weeks, their endurance is pushed to the limit. Follow Against the Odds wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen ad-free on the Amazon Music or Wondery app.
What is going to be the biggest obstacle for the prosecution and for the defense?
Well, the problem with a retrial, criminal cases, there are no depositions. When the government's investigating a criminal case, they need an indictment. They bring witnesses into the grand jury, they interview them before, and they get testimony from that way. But of course, the defense team, Fifth Amendment, you don't have to say a word. But in a trial now, everyone's testified. There's trial transcripts of everyone's testimony, mountains of them. And so now everybody knows what everybody said the last time. So from the prosecution standpoint, they have to be very careful that when they put on their case, it has to be consistent with their last case.
Right.
Because if it's inconsistent, there's going to get egg on their face. And it could create real problems. The defense can't point that out. They can, depending on the witnesses, particularly if I'm the witness and I say ABC, but when I testify again, I say EEF, DEF. they can't show them the transcript of their prior travel. The jury doesn't know it's the prior trial, generally. Didn't you say on a prior date this? Yes, I did. You can impeach people much easier, and that will look bad. I'll tell you what the government has to do, though. They have to start fresh with new accident reconstruction people. And they have to get their experts together. And what often happens is they all use state police people. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. But in a case like this, you need the very best. So they've got their work cut out for it. The evidence has marinated. You know what I mean? It's all oozy now. So I think both sides have to be careful, much more so the prosecution, because it's their case and they take up what they call 70 witnesses, and the defense called 5. So they're not so worried about that, I don't think. If an expert says this, an expert says that, the snowplow dryer. I think the defense is in the catbird seat because they now have a total, you see, the defense they get statements and reports from the government and maybe grand jury minutes, but they don't see the testimony out. It's not like a deposition where they get to question the witnesses. And now they see everything and they have a much better opportunity to shape their defenses in a way with a lot more sort of foresight. And I think that's a plus for them. And I think they'll keep their same themes. So the defense, if I was them, I'd be concerned. They really hammered the Alpert family thing. And I'm not sure the jury bought that because it was certainly suspicious, but it wasn't conclusive. I'm not sure you play that. You certainly don't need to make this a 10-week trial. It really isn't a 10-week trial.
Yeah.
They do have a new prosecutor. The state has. They hired a defense attorney who's done prosecutions to work with Mr. Lally, who was overwhelmed and overworked by this job. Not overwhelmed. He did a very fine job, but it was a one-man show.
Right.
They had 3 lawyers on the other side. He needs more help, and this guy Brennan is very capable. You don't want to get your case in and get it done, and let the defense deal with that. So I think they'll repeat much of the same themes. But it's the prosecution is not in the catbird seat. I think the defense has a real advantage now, knowing what's coming.
What are your last thoughts on this case? Is there something we should pay most attention to?
If I'm the prosecutor in this case, and I'm seeing now that the defense is saying, there's not much I can do about the Alberts and everybody in the house. Now, I said before, if they, prior to charging anybody, they'd put them in the grand jury to find out what happened. Everybody was drinking that night. Everybody was hammered. I mean, you really had to do more investigation. But you see, the trooper figured she was the one. It was a car accident. She tried it. Well, they didn't charge her with murder at first. They just charged her with negligence, basically, hitting him accidentally. But they did such a crummy job on that. You can't go back and do that anymore. So that's out. I think, having studied some of the evidence and listened to some of the testimony, the whole scientific part about the glass and the tail light, and where I didn't know he was found. The officer was found way down the street,
down by the road.
I thought he was hit by the
stairs. Yeah.
So to me, if I'm they have to really be more clear on that. I don't know whether they had diagrams and so forth.
Yeah, because if she hit him, why would he end up all the way at the street?
Well, his one theory is that she was mad at him. They were both drinking heavily. She didn't want to go in. She drove away, backed out of the driveway. It's just a one in and out driveway. Went backwards and headed in the other direction. He chased after her. This is just me, Bob Peabody. I don't really know. And again, I think alcohol fueled a great deal of the tension. He tried to stop her. I'm not sure he could beat her down to the corner, but if he did, and she whizzed by him, then maybe he was hit and fell down and died. My client was the doctor witness, so his body temperature was really low when he came into the hospital.
Yeah.
But it might seem as if that he got behind the car and she backed into him purposely, because apparently she was backing up at 25 miles an hour. I don't know where that occurred, whether it was out of the driveway or going forward, but I would study that very much more carefully and be clear about your theory about how that actually happened, even if it's a surmise. And I would do everything I could to get out from under this glass was broken in the sally port and then brought to the scene. They've got to be clearer on that. The government has to be clearer on that, because I think that is because there apparently was DNA and glass in his clothes. So that, to me, I thought was a compelling piece of evidence. But I think I don't think it's a murder, and I don't think she left the scene. Maybe she left the scene, but I think it's really a question: did she hit him? And that's what the government should focus on. And I don't think I would have brought. Apparently, the reason why they brought the murder charges is because they got from the children, the kids that the guardian he was taking care of, the officer was taking care of, that they were fighting a lot. So what? I think that was really an overreach. And I think if I did it again, if I was in charge, I would drop that charge and just deal with the automobile thing. But I don't think the defense doesn't want to give up what happened inside the house, and no one know. And they said he never came in, and they're going to say it again. So we'll see. But it should be a good case. I hope it's shorter. I think the lawyering will be better. The case everyone knows it, so maybe it'll move quicker. And maybe we'll get some kind of resolution short of a verdict. It's awfully tiring to try cases for 10 weeks or 8 weeks. Government often will give the defendant a sweetheart deal about something, misdemeanor, something like that.
Yeah.
I think they back themselves into the corner. The DA, they're determined to do this. But I think the sympathy is still with her.
Well, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Kate. It's nice to meet you. You
too. And you're going to have to come back.
Please call me back. I'm a lawyer in Boston. I work at the firm of Husch, Blackwell. Robert Peabody is my name. And I enjoy to communicate with nice people like you in the media who are curious about certainly an interesting case like this.
The amazing Kate Casey.
I want to thank Robert Peabody and remind you the importance of clicking subscribe. Please leave a 5-star review. Join the Facebook group Reality Life with Kate Casey. I want to hear what you think about this case. And you can also get bonus episodes by going to Patreon, patreon.com/KKC. You can also get my What to Watch list, my weekly list of what to watch in unscripted TV by going to katecasey.substack.com. And you can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at @KKCCA, TikTok, it's KKC, and Twitter and Threads and Blue Sky at @KKC. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode about a documentary called Spy High on Amazon Prime.
People do all their shopping online these days. You could say e-commerce businesses fuel our economy. And while many customers think their orders magically appear, it's not magic. Chances are their packages arrived thanks to ShipStation. Last year alone, over 700 million orders were fulfilled with ShipStation. ShipStation syncs orders from everywhere you sell into one dashboard. You can replace manual tasks with custom automations to reduce shipping errors. And ShipStation gets you the best rates across global carriers. You'll save up to 88% off UPS, USPS, and DHL rates, and up to 90% off FedEx rates. During the time you've been listening to this ad, another 1,400 packages were shipped with the help of ShipStation. Upgrade to a smoother shipping experience. Go to shipstation.com/program to sign up for your free trial. No credit card or contract required, and you can cancel anytime. That's shipstation.com/program.